housing and fixed income front. He says he's seeing a new normal boom for yields. Bob Shiller is a professor of economics at Yale University. He is co-founder of the Case-Shiller Index. He's also author of the best-selling book, Irrational Exuberance. And Bob, thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Becky.
What is it that you see happening in stocks that concerns you at this point?
Well, the valuation is high. My CAPE index, which is price divided by 10-year average earnings, is higher than it's been except 1929, 2000, and 2007. So the other thing is the public, I do expectation survey, the public worries that the stock market is overpriced. So their confidence in the level of the market is at its lowest since 2000.
The CAPE measurement is one thing, but if you look at public confidence, sometimes that's almost a counter indicator, Bob. When people think that now is the time to jump in, that's sometime when everybody is thinking that sometimes is the precursor of a real crash.
That's a bubble. When people think it's time to jump in, even though it's overpriced. And that's what we saw in the late 1990s, leading up to the enormous dot-com, I call it the millennium bubble.
So in terms of valuations alone, I can understand why valuations may run higher when you're looking at this, because people again point to that there is no alternative, that TINA environment. If not stocks, where do you go? And I wonder how long that can last.
I don't know. I suspect it's not over. You know, that's the classic story of bubbles. People keep pointing out the bubble, and years go by, and then they're totally discredited, and that's when the bubble finally bursts.
So in terms of what you would be doing with your money right now, you would not be buying stocks?
No, I am in the stock market. I think I have to be careful, though, not to overexpose to that. Also, I think the U.S. is one of the highest stock markets in the world. So I think this is a good time. Some people are not very diversified internationally. This is a good time to rethink that.
In terms of what you see with housing, there have been some numbers that have concerned you recently too, correct?
Well, I think that, the housing market has had diminishing momentum. Now, momentum matters more for the housing market than for other markets because the housing market is less efficient. So we saw a bottoming out of the housing market in most U.S. cities around 2012, and then we saw really rapid increases in home prices. And now that's starting to fade. It's weakening, and now it's down to just kind of average performance. We saw with our S&P Case-Shiller indices, for our 20-city index, a 4.9% increase over the last year. That's not exciting. It doesn't excite most people. I don't think this is a flaming bubble.
And you think there's risk for further decline there?
There's always risk of decline. I think that the problem is that home prices have been mean reverting, literally, for the last over 100 years. And we're on a relatively high level. And so it seems that construction has been very low ever since the financial crisis. You know, I heard someone say earlier that that booms don't die of old age. Well, there is some factor that does. What happens in a boom is there's a lot of adding to inventories or construction, and then there's too much. Alternatively, when there's a bust, there isn't enough construction or new cars produced and things like that. So there's a lower inventory of those things. That's where we are now, where we have been. It's been starting to drive things up. But now, you know, construction is still not very high. So I think this could possibly still go for years still, where we'll see moderate increases in real home prices.
All right. Professor Shiller, I want to thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.